Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Q&A session of Sustainability, the New Normal. Thank you for watching episode 1 and sharing your feedback and your comments. I've gone through them, I've gathered them, and I would like to answer the top 3 questions from that. So governments are implementing stricter environmental regulations, right? Like mandatory use of renewable energy, limits on emissions release by industries or factories, carbon pricing, use of cleaner raw materials, restrictions on waste management and its disposal, and things like that. Businesses need to adapt and comply to these regulations to avoid potential fines or penalties. And in fact, you see that regulations implemented in one part of the world, once they get successful, they're replicated around the world, right? And you can also see that an organization that functions in one way in one part of the world, right, works differently in other part of the world because of the factor owing to mandatory regulations in one of them. Then after regulations would be consumer demand. Consumers are becoming more environmentally conscious and are actively seeking out, sustainable products and services, right? And businesses that can demonstrate their commitment to sustainability are more likely to, attract and retain customers. This has become almost sort of a reputation factor, not only to reach that standard, but also to continue to maintain it. Food, farm produce, food products, consumer goods, perishables, energy, transport, and there are several areas that we see an increasing consumer demand for less planet harming, activities, right? Then there is investor pressure, where investors are increasingly considering ESG factors, when making investment decisions, right? And companies with strong sustainability practices are seen more resilient and attractive for investments. In a sense, I'd even tie up this factor with the first one that we discussed, because the regulations in sustainable finance is also pushing companies to, play by the book of new rules. And of course, last but not the least, commercial feasibility, which is, one of the most important drivers that is helping companies shift to sustainability, owing to how economical a particular solution or a technology is, right? We see this in energy, transport, mobility, and several other areas coming up. And I think in many cases, it's the new technology, which is behind it that makes it commercially, more feasible than the existing options. So yeah, I'd say that these four are the most important factors. I think one of the foremost challenges, right, that can confront organizations is the know-how, of how do we do it? How do we get there? Or in fact, what are the sustainability targets that we need to set? Questions of this nature are, most frequent ones. And, once an organization identifies which are the elements that are contributing the most to their carbon footprint, that's when they decide to focus on that area. Then again, questions on how high or how low should the target be? Should we do this or that? Is this sustainable enough? How exactly, is it sustainable? Maybe it can vary from one organization to another organization and even to countries, right? What cost impact it will have on the organization, right? And most importantly, things like how can I stay ahead of the curve, right? Can I better my competitors? Is this really greening or greenwashing? Is the money going into what truly matters for the organization? Why aren't others following if this is already the best practice? So questions of this nature are something that we at EvalueServe, do constantly receive and answer to our clients on a day-to-day basis. And as organizations get mature with the knowledge and the implementation of sustainable business practices, right, the nature of these questions will continue to change. Then there is the challenge of change management, be it within the organization, sector, or even the industry. Initially, you see denial, and then there is slow accepting, there is adapting, and finally getting comfortable with the new normal of sustainability in going about their everyday business, right? How do we make this happen? How can we make, our decisions more data driven? How can we better facilitate decision making at CXO level? How can we nudge our players within the organization or within the industry, right, to move to these new practices? So different teams at EvalueServe work with globally leading organizations, to help them answer these questions, to make better decisions and help them shift to the new normal of sustainability. Imagine this were a movie, right? Let us look at climate change and the whole transition towards sustainability as the first act, the second act, and the third act. In the first act, it introduces the main characters, the setting, the background information, it creates the world and establishes the initial situation. There is a central conflict or a problem, which is the climate change. And I think that we are past this stage, especially I'd call COVID as a definitive point where the first act ends. We've taken more than a decade, in fact, to reach this point. And now the major stakeholders, right, that are many businesses have already understood the importance of fighting climate change at a surface level and presume that they have the tools to address it. Now, we just got started with the second act. In this, the main characters, that we all are actively trying to resolve this conflict. We know that things are now more serious than before. The stakes are raised and the characters faces obstacles and complications, like we see in the world today, trying to bring about climate change action positively, right? Although there's tension in the world right now for businesses, I think they're going to face a little more of such uncertainty and VUCA, the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous factors. And these are going to be more pronounced and connected to climate change. We will see that more and more companies will actively admit the harm this is causing to the planet and will start to cross question the very foundations of business and profit. They will, more seriously start to consider planet over more growth and profit, or how to coexist better, right? And will make a fundamental shift towards more and truly meaningful change. We have this unending thirst, to grow more and to, to the point where we start to question how much of this growth is it that we truly want? What is this growth? Whose growth is it that we want? How much of it do we truly need? Who will pay the price and so on? And I'm quite certain that the moment people will get stronger and even businesses will realize the need to take, the steps forward to go. But by this time, at least 2 to 3 decades have happened. But sustainably made products are already competitive than conventional ones in different sectors. And one of the foremost school of thought that incentivizing consumption as the best way to grow is ideally overturned in at least half the world because it's something that humans often fall into this trap. In the final act, the loose ends are tried and we are in the verge of solving the problems. The characters will go home knowing that they've worked for a better world, and for the change that is required. It does remain if we do it in time or not. Thank you for watching. I'll meet you in the next episode.